3 true car wash horror stories. This is Mr. H. You're listening to Masked Horror. Was it the nun or the clown? It was almost 2 a.m. when I left my friend's house, exhausted but in good spirits. The night had been quiet, just a few beers and laughs, nothing extraordinary. I wasn't far from my home, but as I drove through the deserted streets, my car caught my eye in the streetlights. Dust streaked the hood, and the wheels were caked in grime from the rain earlier that week. I loved my car, a sleek black sports coupe that I'd saved for years to afford. I couldn't stand seeing it dirty, so when I passed a 24-hour self-serve car wash, I decided to stop. The place was dead empty. Rows of vacant bays stretched out under flickering fluorescent lights, and the air smelled faintly of soap. I pulled into the second bay, parked, and grabbed the pressure washer. As I rinsed off the dirt, I felt a little thrill. It always felt good to keep my car spotless. I was midway through scrubbing the hood when I noticed something out of the corner of my eye. A flash of black and white at the edge of the lot. I turned my head, squinting, but whatever it was had disappeared. Probably just my imagination, or maybe a pedestrian cutting through the lot. Shrugging it off, I returned to rinsing, but then I saw it again. This time, it was clearer. A figure dressed in black and white, just standing there, half hidden in the shadows. My pulse quickened. For a second, I thought it was the priest or something, but as they stepped closer, I saw the unmistakable dress of a nun. A nun? At this hour? Before I could process it, another figure appeared, a clown. He emerged from the same shadow, dressed in baggy, mismatched clothes, his face smeared with messy makeup and a grin painted so unevenly it looked more menacing than silly. I froze. My first thought was, this has to be a prank. This was right around the time when all those clown sightings had been going on. The clown sightings had been all over the news, and people were dressing up to scare others. It was weird, but I figured someone was trying to be funny. Okay, you got me, I called out nervously, trying to sound casual. Neither of them responded. They just stood there, watching me. Something wasn't right. I felt it in the pit of my stomach, the kind of instinct you don't question. I dropped the pressure washer and started moving toward the driver's side door. That's when the clown started walking toward me. "Nice car," he said, his voice light but unusual, like he was trying to mimic a cartoon character. "Must have cost you a lot." The nun followed, her footsteps silent. She didn't say a word, but her presence was suffocating. Her face was pale, and her eyes were blank, like she was staring right through me. "Look, if you're messing with me, I'm not in the mood," trying to keep my voice steady. The clown reached into his oversized pants and pulled out a knife. It wasn't one of those small pocket knives either. This was long and jagged, like something you'd see in a slasher movie. "Wallet," he said, grinning. "Now." My hands were trembling so badly, I could barely get my wallet out of my back pocket. I held it out, and the clown snatched it. "Phone too," he added. I hesitated, but then the nun pulled out a small revolver from her robe. It looked old but functional. It could have been a toy gun for all I knew. I've never had a gun pointed directly at me before. She didn't even raise it. She just held it at her side. Her silence more terrifying than anything the clown had said. I handed over my phone, feeling my heart pounding in my chest. "Keys," the clown said, twirling the knife lazily. I hesitated. "Please, just take whatever you have and go." The nun raised the gun slightly, just enough to make her point. Swallowing hard, I tossed my keys to the clown. He caught them and smirked. "Run," he said, his tone light and almost playful. "What?" I said. "You heard me. Run." I didn't wait for him to repeat himself. I bolted, sprinting out of the car wash and across the street. I didn't look back until I was a block away. From a distance, I saw my car pull out of the bay, the headlights cutting through the darkness. The clown was behind the wheel, and the nun in the passenger seat. The car screeched as they sped off, leaving me standing there, shaking. I called the police as soon as I could, but by the time they arrived, the car was long gone. I gave them my description of the clown and the nun, but the officer taking my statement looked skeptical, like he thought I was making it up. Why would I make up something like this? I thought to myself. You're not the first person to report something like this, he admitted. We've had other complaints about people dressed up as clowns lately, but the nun, that's a new one. It took 3 days for them to find my car. It was abandoned in a field about 50 miles away, stripped of anything valuable and spray painted with graffiti. My dream car, gone, desecrated. But that wasn't the worst part. The detective handling the case showed me a photo from the car wash's security cam footage. The image should have shown the clown and the nun approaching me. Instead, the camera had glitched, just static and streaks of light where their figures should have been. What's strange, the detective said, is that this only happens when they're in frame. We've checked the cameras before and after, perfectly fine. After doing some research after this incident, I uncovered some shocking information. Apparently, it's not uncommon for cameras to glitch or fail outright in many cases due to many different factors, from the age of the hardware to errors in installation. I stopped going to car washes after that for a while. I stopped driving at night altogether. And if I do go, I only go during the day when there are at least a couple of people there with me. Every time I think about that night, I feel sick. The clown, the nun, the way they just watched me. It wasn't just about stealing my car. Sometimes I wonder if they'd planned to do something worse, something I barely escaped. The vanishing sound. It was just past midnight when I finally clocked out of my shift at the hospital. 12 hours on my feet, running between patients, and barely enough time to eat. I was beyond exhausted. My SUV was parked in the farthest corner of the lot, coated in the grime of the week's worth of commuting. I couldn't stand looking at it anymore. There was a 24-hour car wash on my way home, and even though I was dead tired, I decided to stop. The place was empty when I pulled in. The automatic bay glowed under buzzing fluorescent lights, and the air was thick with the smell of soap and damp concrete. Honestly, it was a scent that brought me comfort. I always used to love going to the car wash with my dad when I was younger. It's just one of those core memories for me. I swiped my card, pulled into the bay, and put the car in park. The machine roared to life, spraying jets of water against the windshield. I leaned back, letting myself relax for the first time all day. The rhythmic sound of the water was oddly soothing. But then, about halfway through the cycle, everything stopped. At first, I thought the machine had just paused. It has happened to me before and thought it would start up again shortly. But this time, the silence felt heavy, like the air itself was holding its breath. I glanced in the rearview mirror, and that's when I saw it. A shadowy figure darting past the back of my car. My stomach dropped. "Get a grip, Shannon," I muttered, trying to brush it off. Maybe it was just my reflection, distorted by the soapy windows. But then I saw it again. This time on the passenger side. The figure moved quickly, too fast for me to make out any details. My first instinct was to lock the doors, so I did. The click echoed in the small space, and my hands were trembling as I gripped the steering wheel. I scanned the mirrors, but the figure had vanished. The machine sputtered back to life, as if nothing had happened. By the time the wash cycle ended, I convinced myself it was just fatigue messing with me. I was a nurse, after all. I'd seen how sleep deprivation could make people hallucinate. The conveyor belt pulled my car forward, but just as I reached the exit, the machine jolted and stopped again. Then I felt it, a sudden movement It felt like it was coming from the trunk, but that wouldn't make sense, I said to myself. It was like something heavy had dropped onto it. My heart skipped a beat. It was probably just the mechanism jamming, I told myself. But then there was another sound, a faint scratching, almost like nails on metal. I panicked. I threw the car into drive and hit the gas, speeding out of the car wash and onto the main road. My pulse was racing the entire drive home. I kept glancing at the mirrors, expecting to see someone or something lurking in the back seat. But the car was empty. It had to be. When I got home, I didn't even bother unloading my bag. I parked in the driveway and rushed inside, locking the door behind me. My 3 pit bulls greeted me, their tails wagging. Blue, Bella, the princess, and Chase. They were my protectors, always on high alert. If anything was out there, they'd know. I should have felt safe, but I couldn't shake the unease. I double-checked the locks and even peeked out the window to make sure the car was still in the driveway. It was. Nothing seemed out of place, but the hairs on the back of my neck wouldn't settle. Around 4 a.m., I was jolted awake by a loud crash. It came from the back door. My alarm went off, and the dogs went wild, barking and growling, their claws scraping against the hardwood floor. My heart was pounding as I grabbed my phone and crept toward the hallway. Another crash, this time louder. Someone was trying to break in. I peeked around the corner and saw the silhouette of a man through the glass door. He was fiddling with the lock, but he froze when the dogs charged at the door, their snarls filling the house. He backed off, stumbling over himself as he disappeared into the darkness. I called the police immediately. They arrived within minutes, but the man was long gone. They checked the perimeter and found footprints leading away from the house, but no sign of him. One of the officers asked if I'd noticed anything unusual earlier in the night. That's when it hit me, the car wash. Their faces turned grim as I explained what happened. They opened the trunk of my SUV, and what they found made my stomach turn. There was a blanket shoved in the corner and a small bag filled with duct tape, zip ties, and a knife. The officer's expression was serious. It looks like someone got into your car while you were at the car wash. You're lucky you didn't stop to check. The realization made me sick. Whoever it was had been in my car the entire drive home, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. If it hadn't been for my dogs, I might not be here to tell this story. I sold the SUV a week later. I couldn't bear to sit in it, knowing what had almost happened. To this day, I can't drive alone at night without checking the back seat every few minutes, and I never, ever go to a car wash after dark. Also, I made sure to give my 2 kings, and now queen, a steak dinner for protecting us. Car wash. No thanks. I'll never forget the day my fear of car washes began. I was around 8 years old, sitting in the rear passenger seat of my dad's sedan. He had this philosophy about parenting: face your fears, no matter how uncomfortable it made you. I hated car washes, even back then. The noise, the confined space, the darkness, it all felt like some kind of trap. It's just soap and water, Dad said, smiling as he handed me a juice box. Nothing to be afraid of. I nodded, clutching the juice box like a lifeline. The moment we pulled into the automatic bay, my chest tightened. The clunky machine roared to life, and massive brushes slapped against the car, shaking it like an earthquake. See? Nothing to it, Dad said, his voice calm as the water jet sprayed over the windshield. But something didn't feel right. The car jolted slightly, and the brushes on the passenger side made a loud grinding sound. I looked over just in time to see the side mirror bending unnaturally, the mirror straining under the force. "Dad, the mirror," I started, but it was too late. With a loud snap, the mirror tore off and got stuck into the spinning brush. My dad cursed under his breath, but before he could react, the brush hurled the mirror with violent force. It happened so fast. 1 second, I was staring at the spot where the mirror used to be. The next, there was a deafening crash as the shattered mirror smashed against the passenger window right next to me. I screamed. Glass shards rained down, mixing with the soapy water that started pouring into the car. The water wasn't just dripping, it was flooding. I could feel it soaking into my shoes, icy and slimy. "Hold on," Dad shouted, fumbling to put the car in gear and drive out. The machine kept running though, relentless in its assault. The brushes slammed against the car like it had a vendetta, and the soap made it impossible to see through the windshield. I could hear my dad muttering as the water sprayed into the interior like a broken fire hydrant. When we finally made it out, the car was wrecked. The interior was soaked, glass and plastic scattered everywhere. I was shaking so badly, I couldn't let go of the seatbelt. Dad called the insurance company, and they ruled that the car wash was responsible. They covered the damage, but that didn't matter to me. No amount of money could erase those memories of those claustrophobic minutes, the feeling of being trapped and helpless as the world fell apart around me. To this day, I can't bring myself to go through an automatic car wash. The idea of those spinning brushes and the confined space sends my heart racing. I know most people would say it's just a car wash, but for me, it's a nightmare I can't escape. And honestly, I don't think I ever will.